We have a full house. That's a good problem to have, but let's have everyone come on in. Let's close the doors and get started. We appreciate your enthusiasm and attendance at this session. My name is Tom Giovanetti. I'm the president of the Institute for Policy Innovation, and we, along with the State Policy Network, are your hosts for this session. We have created something this year that we're very excited about called the Restore the 10th website and the 10th Amendment Coalition. The 10th Amendment Coalition is a new creation this year. It's a group of think tanks, organizations, concerned citizens, attorneys generals, governors, and state legislators who are going to add their names to a list of people who are restoring their interest in the Constitution, specifically in the 10th Amendment. We would urge you to go to that website and add your name to the list and sign up. We don't ask you for any money. We're just trying to build the largest possible list of people who are concerned about the 10th Amendment and would like to see the legislature and the judicial branch and the executive branch start to pay attention to the 10th Amendment again. On the table in front of you, you have a packet of information. One of the things you have is a glossy bookmark. It has the URL of the website on it. So that's to help you remember when you get back home and you're going through all of your paperwork that you've accumulated this week. You will have the URL right there in front of you. So we'd love for you to join us in the 10th Amendment Coalition. We have a fabulous panel. We have a number of people who already have told us they want to ask questions at the end, so we'll try to move quickly. They say that every cloud has a silver lining, and the policy world has been full of clouds for the last 2 years or so, but if there is a silver lining on everything that's gone wrong and on all the poor decisions that have been made in the last 2 years, perhaps it is the fact that people have rediscovered the Constitution and that concerned citizens all over the country are reading the founding documents and they are reading the Constitution and they are reading the Federalist Papers. It's my understanding that this summer, in addition to traditional things like Vacation Bible School, there were Vacation Freedom Schools where children came together and were taught the founding documents, and we're taught basic civics, and we're exposed to the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. This is a fabulous thing that's happening in our country. We're very excited about it, and as a public policy think tank, we're looking for ways that we can be of service to this movement, and the 10th Amendment Coalition is one of those ways. As people begin to interact with the Constitution again, they're struck by the 10th Amendment. It jumps off the page. It leaps out at people. Any casual reading of the Constitution tells you that the 10th Amendment is important, that it's a summary statement of the founders' intentions as far as the role and the relationship of the federal government to the states. The problem is the 10th Amendment has fallen into it's ignored today by all branches of government. The judicial branch uses aggressive and creative interpretations of the Commerce Clause basically to neuter the 10th Amendment. And the legislative branch, well, legislative branch these days openly laughs and chortles at the idea that they are limited in any way by the Constitution, that there's anything that is outside the purview of the legislative branch. The states are not without criticism in this regard as well. Too often states have been willing to be bought off on their sovereignty. We will take those federal dollars as if there is any such thing as a federal dollar. They take the federal dollars and they sell their sovereignty. So it's not just the folks in Washington that are culpable, we're all culpable for allowing the founders' design to be eroded. It's long past time for the states in particular to begin pushing back against federal intrusions. We need to be reminded, as Ronald Reagan reminded us during his first inaugural speech, that it was the states that created the federal government and not the other way around. It was the states that wrote the Constitution. It was the states that ratified the Constitution. And it was the states that created the federal government. So IPI and the State Policy Network would love to be involved in this movement of restoring the 10th Amendment and renewing this idea that there are some things that are prohibited by the Constitution to the federal government. And it's time for all of us, citizens, legislators, attorneys general, governors, it's time for all of us to start standing up against those intrusions. We have a fabulous panel today. We're very honored by the quality of people who have agreed to join us for this panel. And so it's time for me to shut up and let them start working. We're going to start off with Congressman Rob Bishop. You have an extensive bio for Congressman Bishop on the desk in front of you. You don't need me to read that to you. So Congressman Bishop, let me turn the podium over to you. I should mention that part of the packet we're distributing to you is a special ALEC edition of a paper that Congressman Bishop wrote for the 10th Amendment Coalition a few weeks ago. So you all have a copy of it. It's fabulous. I suggest that you interact with it. And for now, I'm pleased to introduce Congressman Rob Bishop.
I appreciate that kind introduction and the opportunity of being here with y'all. And what I wrote, I hope was good.
It's very good. It's very good.
Good. I want to thank you for this opportunity of being here. I want to put a couple of caveats out there at the very beginning. There are a lot of my good friends who are members of the legislature of Utah here. Whatever they tell you about me, I want you to know it's wrong. Handle that. I am grateful to be here with the Lieutenant Governor from Missouri, who's got some wonderful experiences that they've had back in his state this last week that I think is great there, and also with my good friend John Shattuck, which is a phrase we use in Congress. We don't really mean it.
That's right.
But in this case, I do mean it, because I want you to know I think John Shattuck is probably the most creative member of Congress we have, and one of the sad parts is he's not running for re-election. And we are going to miss a strong, principled conservative who thinks and thinks outside the box and does it well and does it consistently. So I'm happy to be here with John. And you deserve that. Now, also, let's face it, I'm a member of Congress, so you know that's prima facie evidence that I'm not all that bright. And I convinced that because I just flew in today, and at 4 o'clock I'm going to fly back out to go home again. So anyone who comes to San Diego in a suit, which I never wear at home, and stays that length of time, you obviously realize there's something intellectually wrong with me in the very beginning. So if you'll overlook that, I'd appreciate it. You also recognize, as you just look at me, that I'm old, which is one of the problems I have. See, when I was young, I used to remember that if I heard a song I really liked, I had to go down and I had to buy an entire vinyl album and then do the best to try and put the needle on the right groove, which always didn't work, and I always messed up the record. And we have a generation that has no idea what a broken record means anymore. I know what exactly it was. Now, today it's totally different. If I hear something I really like, I have an iPod, and all I need to do is call up one of my kids and say, come on over. I don't know how the hell these things work, but he can put it on there, which means I get exactly what I want, even if it's a symphony. I mean, Dvorak's New World Symphony, I found out I really like the first and third movement, and the second one I hated. I don't care if it's the theme, I don't like it. I only got the first and third movements, and I can pick what I want to. In the entire world, all the entrepreneurs of the world have recognized that our life is one of options and choices. There are 18 different types of wheat thins. I can buy 16 different kinds of Pringles. Campbell's soup has 160 different varieties for me to choose. Even if I want vanilla, I can still go to a place that gives me 31 options. Everything about our life today is one of choice and options until you get to Washington. And then in Washington, D.C., it is still one size fits all, and it's mandated down, and it's usually poorly done, and Obamacare is just one of the examples of how we still have that mindset. That's only found in Washington. It's not found anywhere else in the world that we have. The solution to that, at least in my opinion, is the concept of federalism. Federalism is not, and I hope I don't say something I said yesterday, I apologize if I do. Federalism is not a Republican or a Democrat issue. It's not even a liberal or a conservative issue. The issue should be who can best serve the people, how do we best serve the people, and it's my contention that usually Washington, D.C. is the loser in that particular equation. Because there's only one thing Washington can do better than state and local government. We can make things unitary. If everyone has to do the exact same thing at the exact same time, at the exact same way, Washington is the only one that can force that through. But if indeed you have something in which you want creativity, or you want to have the justice that comes when you take in special circumstances, or you want diversity or efficiency, Washington is not where you're going to do that. When I was first elected, our class came up with a program to try and come up and end waste, fraud, and abuse in the federal government. I wasn't really crazy about that effort because, to be honest, you'll never get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse in the federal government. It is too big. Any large organization has waste, fraud, and abuse. The larger the state, the more waste, fraud, and abuse. It's just inherent in the process. The only way you get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse is quit having large entities try to coordinate and organize everything because they're, in fact, and besides, I really don't want a more efficient government controlling me. I want less government controlling me. That still becomes the bottom line. Now, if you go to the House chamber where we serve, they have all the great icons of the world, the great lawgivers of the world, whose profiles are around the top of the chamber. Moses, as the greatest of all lawgivers, is the only one that has a full face looking at the speaker. And in all that group, there are only two Americans, Thomas Jefferson and George Mason, which is both ironic because neither one of them actually signed the Constitution. In fact, George Mason is one of three people who spent the entire time at the Constitution Convention and then refused to affix his signature to it. Now, when I was teaching school, I always insisted my kids had to tell me, why did Mason not sign the Constitution? And as those of you who've gone through elementary government classes in high school, you know he didn't sign it because it did not have a Bill of Rights. I was always hoping, and I have to say in vain, that I'd finally get one kid who would give me what I think is the more significant question, which is not why did Mason not sign the document, it's why did all the other people there not go along with Mason and add a Bill of Rights? Because what they did, it was certainly not because they were opposed to individual liberty. What they did is they had another way of producing that liberty structurally within the government. So their idea of a check and balance system had the sole goal of producing and defending individual liberty. They divided power horizontally between the three branches, which is what we always teach in schools, and then forget that equally important to them, even more important, was a vertical separation of power between Washington and the states. And the sole goal of that was liberty, which by my definition means if you have choices and options in your life, you therefore have liberty. And that's what government is supposed to do. So that the 10th Amendment was rewritten to reestablish what they put in there as a structural component, that there should be some kind of balance, not control, but balance between the two branches, the federal and the state, to make sure that no one could dominate to the extent that individual liberty or choices or options were taken away from people. 10th Amendment is significant because it reserves powers to the states. It also reserves powers to people. Sometimes it is amazing when you actually think that there might indeed out there be a problem that does not need the government to find a solution. No one in Washington can actually comprehend such a world. But the Founding Fathers did, and that's why they put that in there, that power should be with the people at the same time. I was giving a speech with Garrett on the floor one time. We were talking about the General Welfare Clause. When they wrote it, they emphasized the word general, so that Washington wasn't supposed to do anything unless it affected everybody. Okay, I got a letter, actually a phone call from a lady in Alabama who took me to task and saying, it's a nice speech, I liked it and all that, but these are the things government does that I like. And she listed off a whole bunch of options. And I said, lady, you missed the entire point. It is not that government does not have to provide all those things you like. The issue is which level of government has to provide those things you like. Just because there is a program out there does not mean it has to be funded, authorized, and controlled by Washington, D.C. That's what federalism is about. And that's what the 10th Amendment is about. Justice Scalia once said, in a Supreme Court decision, that the Constitution protects us from our own best instincts. It divides power amongst sovereignties and different levels of government to help us resist the temptation to concentrate power in one place as the expedient solution for the crisis of the day. That's what we should still be about. Now, one of the reasons I'm happy to be here is I am an old state legislator who, in my time in the state legislature and Speaker of the House in Utah, I learned to hate Congress. I told that to a group once, and then I got all these nasty letters saying, why are you in Congress if you hate Congress? I am in Congress because I hate Congress. I learned in all those years. I got sick and tired. I am still chafing every time someone talks to me about the Help America Vote Act or the Motor Voter Act or all those things we had to implement in the state, and also was given the wonderful opportunity to pay for them at the same time. Those things don't necessarily have to be there. Health care in Utah, for example, is an area in which the state of Utah went on with an exchange program that was based after the unique demographics of the state of Utah. We have more kids than most of you. We also have more small businesses that don't provide insurance than most people. We need something specifically designed for Utah. If you have a one-size-fits-all program from Washington, D.C., that simply will never be there. P.J. O'Rourke once said, "The mystery of government is not how it works, but how do you make it stop?"